Hello everyone and welcome to March 365 days of weather scrapbooking. This is the collaboration that I'm doing with Julie Carriere in Canada, and you can see I've done a bit of a dry fit and a plan out of the March layout. This is a screenshot image of the design space file, and I'm going to walk you through this video how I have filled this because this is layered, so I thought it might be an idea to record what the design space file looks like. So I've recorded the screen to show how I have filled these sections together, and what I also want to show you is how I've added some extra texture and layering to these squares. You can see my March layout here is mainly all toffee colours, so these are the JPEGs that come with the instructions, and I am basically within this range here. There's not too much variation except one day where we got into Avocado and a couple of days into Sundance. It was a very mild and nice even tempered March for us, which I really love. But when it came to putting these together, especially on the last few days of March, I have all toffee coloured pieces, and we're using dark and light shades because that gives a little bit of variation to this. I've already put some of the flowers together, but I want to show you I've got one to put together on camera. I'm also going to be putting my photos in here where I'm going to be adding in those extra memory protectors, the Pocket Plus pages. So what I want to do is just show you, this is a screenshot. I've already filled this in with all my colours from the 1st of March right through until the 31st of March. I decided I wanted my base layer here to be the first, and then every 5 days is represented by each square block here. After I filled this, I went through and did the screenshot and wrote which layer. So the B here represents the base, and that's day 1, and it's the light side, so that's Shortbread light side. And then this square here is day 2, the light side, and there is the light side for day 3, my Sundance light side, and then my Toffee dark side. So you can see by planning this out, it made it easier for me to put all of this together. I've put a little code down here for which one of these larger squares are the background, and then the smaller squares fit on top. So this is what I mean when you cut the file out. You get a large square for the bottom, and then these framed squares and the inside squares as well. They all cut separately to layer on top. So let's head over to Design Space for a quick run through of how I've easily filled this so that I'm ready to cut it all out, and then I'll be back to show you the added little tricks and texture pieces that I have done to put this page together. Now that we're here in Design Space, I'll just run you through the file fairly quickly. If you're familiar with the projects, if you've done January and February so far, you will know that the colour chart is up in the top left corner, and we also have a JPEG of the colour chart that you can download with the instruction files so that you can see the light and the dark shades of the tones as well, which has come in real handy for me, especially this month, because I have a lot of this range here for Toffee, so we'll be using the dark side and the light side quite a bit. So once you've filled everything and you don't need this reference anymore, before you make it, you can click at this little I button here, and that will hide the whole entire thing so it won't go off and try to cut it on your Cricut. What I wanted to show you was how to fill these. It's a little bit tricky sometimes when there are icons over the top. We set these out like a page sketch so it's easy for you to follow. This one here with the snowflakes is one that Julie will be using because she's still experiencing cold weather. So I'm actually going to hide that so that I can just work on the one that I'll be using and showing you how I've filled these squares. When I've used this is my day 1 to 5 here, my day 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and so on. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see what I want to show you right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is ungroup it. This is just up here. You can ungroup everything. And then I'm going to move this floral element out of the way so that I can easily access these squares and I'm able to click on them. Each section has been grouped together, so I'm going to ungroup that. And it's a little bit hard to fill the background area with other squares over top of them. You can see by me moving this around, I'll get rid of this as well, that the squares are over the top of that base layer. So the base layer for me, and how I'm filling this, because I've used this strip off to the left as the 31st day colour, I want to fill that. So now that I have moved all these other squares off to the side, it's easier for me to fill it. And because this is the background piece or the base layer piece, I know that the 16th was a toffee colour for me. And once I've done that, I can place my squares back over top so that visually it looks the same as what the layout is going to be. By moving these around, it's much easier to click on the images and fill them. So then I can just go through and fill them with the colors. Because the color chart, even though it's hidden, is still being recognized, the colors will be on this material colors bit at the top for easily filling this template. So then I need a little bit of Sundance here and another Shortbread color. So that base layer is my toffee color, and then I've got all of these squares all ready and filled with the colors that I need for those 5 days. And then it's just a case of putting them together. And then I would repeat that for the other sections of these. I would ungroup this one, move these off to the side, or I can move the base layer as well. That one's a bit easier to pick up, but I can just move one off to the side, click on that, fill it with the color that I need, in this case Shortbread, and that's the base layer, and then do exactly what I just did before and go through and click on each of those squares to fill them with the appropriate color. I hope this helped with how to fill this template. It's a bit trickier with all the layers. You do have to move things around a little bit so that you can select the right squares with the right color for the temperature of that day. And now I'm going to go back to the camera and finish assembling and decorating my page. I'm going to work on my all-purpose mat, and usually I would just leave this on my all-purpose mat and bring the colours in, but because it's a bit brown on brown, I'm going to bring in some copy paper, and I'm taking these squares off. And the first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of stenciling. This is from the 12 by 12 stencil pack number 1. It's got a lovely texture. These 12 by 12 stencils, one of the sheets is 4 different designs, so I've cut that down so that I can use that easily. There's enough real estate on these that I felt comfortable with cutting this piece down so that I could stencil. I'm doing tone on tone stenciling, so I'm going to use Toffee ink. I've got a brush here to do this, and I don't want a heavy amount, so I'm actually going to rub some of that off. And I've just taped the top part of this with some blue painter's tape to the top, and then I'm holding the square in place so things don't move around too much. I don't want these lines to go blurry, and I'm just using very light pressure. And then I'm going to peel that back because I don't know if it's picking up on camera. I just want a very light amount of ink coming through. I don't want it to be too strong, and I don't want it to be too even either. I want some areas just a little bit darker than others. You can see this bit here, I put a little bit more ink on, and then I'm going to do the same over in this section. So that's it for my base layer. And I've put my squares back on top, and you can see a little bit of that pattern, but I still want some definition between this dark toffee side and that layer of toffee side. So I've decided that I'm going to ink all the edges. Instead of using a brush for this, because I would get more ink on there than I want, I'm going to use a sponge dauber, and I'm just going to tap off and just go around the edges very quickly on this large square. You can see if I move that down next to the white, there is a little bit of definition there just to separate the colours. And this is all dependent on how much of a difference you want. You know, this is totally personal choice. You can use a heavy hand, you can use a light hand, you can pick the piece up and go along the edge like this. But because I've got so many squares, squares to do, I just found it quite quick just to bring this in. And with the blending tool that we've got, with the sponges and with these brushes, I tend to go in a little bit heavier handed and more of the ink goes on. So I want to make sure that I don't get too much. And it's easier when you're using a frame like this to go in from the edge like this than hold it in your hands, and then you can just hold the other side and drag it in. So I'm going to go around all of these edges for the squares, and then I will be adhering them onto this piece here. So now that that's done, you can see there's a bit more definition to those squares, and it gives it a little bit more life than having all the flat toffee colour. I'm going to adhere all these pieces together off camera, and I'm going to go back to this design here. So looking at this, I know that my base layer is the dark side of toffee. This square here is light. This outer frame is the light side of toffee, which is this one. This outer frame is the dark side of toffee, and that inner square here is the dark. So I'll adhere all that down off camera, but I do want to show you that I've done exactly the same treatment on the other squares. So this one's got avocado, so I've inked with avocado. The base of this is shortbread. I've used exactly the same stencil over top with some shortbread inking. And where I have the little bits of Sundance, I've also used a sponge dauber and gone in over the edges of those, because I wanted all of these squares to have the same sort of treatment to them, not just the ones where it's toffee on toffee. Now, while I'm a bit inky and messy, I'm going to go on to the flowers and show you what I've done with those. There is a difference looking at a flower that's cut out from cardstock and has the actual inking on it. It just seems to bring it to light just a little bit more. I've done this on the smaller arrangements as well as the large ones. So I thought I would show you how I did this on camera. I'm going to start with avocado ink on the base layer, and I'm using a sponge dauber for this, and I'm tapping off, and I'm just going onto certain areas. I'm not doing the whole entire piece. I don't want it to be a flat color. I want to give this some texture and a little bit of life to it by adding a little bit of shading and shadowing and a little bit of sponging over top of the middle parts of the stems as well, not just on the edges. I want to create a little bit of depth, and it doesn't take too long to do, and you don't have to be precise with this. I'm not worrying about where the light source is. I just want the image to be not quite as flat on my page, so that I don't get any ink transfer from the avocado onto the blue flowers. And there's a reason why I've got blue flowers, and you'll see in my photos later on when I go to put those on. I've just wiped off with a baby wipe and then a paper towel to dry it. I'm going in with Glacier ink, a sponge dauber, and I'm just going to go from the center area of the flower out a little bit. I don't have to be perfect on this because there is a layer going over top, and it's just to give a bit of depth and movement. The top layer is actually cut from Carolina, but I don't have any Carolina ink, so I tried using Bluebird ink, but it was just too dark, so I thought I would try with Lagoon. And I quite liked how the Lagoon just gave a little bit of life to these Carolina cut flowers. I'm going around the edges, and this is where an all-purpose mat is really good for this, because the ink can easily be wiped up from this area. I'm also going not just around the outside, but in from the centers as well, and I want to concentrate a little bit more color around this centerpiece here. I'm going to be putting a little gem, or I might cut some Sundance to put underneath there to give a little bit of yellow and bring that in. So this is the third base for the flower because the leaves are attached to it, so I can just put that straight on top. I've got the March title. I'm using this same sort of font all the way through these layouts. So that is an overlay that is just put on top of the base layer of the white. And as I said, this month I've gone ahead and I've gone with flowers. I think Julie's rubbing off on me. I know she loves flowers and I don't use them all that much, but you'll see with my photos that I'm going to put onto this layout why I've gone down the flower path. So I need to go and wash up and then I will be back for the rest of the layout. As you can see off camera, I've put all my photos on. I've put the flowers together and put those onto the page. And I've added some gold pearls from my stash because I thought they coordinated beautifully with the toffee shades that I've got on here. I've put them onto the little banner and also onto this strip as well. As you can see from my photos here, I was very lucky to be able to go away, not once but twice in March. I went on a vacation with my daughter down to Phillip Island. I have many more photos of this trip that my daughter and I did and I've included them, so hang around. I'm going to show you how I've incorporated that within this March double page spread. We also had a team close to my heart maker retreat that Chris and Rob Lothian organised for us, and I've got additional photos of that I have on a flip flap, and I've put from the tabs thin cuts this little tab here so that when I put my page protector on there's something to hold on to and people know to flip that up. And I've incorporated something like that within the other photos that I'm about to show you. I really wanted to be able to put everything from this weekend retreat on this page here. We've got team photos, we had a dress up night, and the theme was bright, bold and beautiful. So our little team here dressed up with our Hawaiian shirts. We had little shrinky stamped earrings that my upline made, and another element here that we could attach to our glasses or wear around our wrist. I thought it would be really fun to have these blow-up pool toys for us to carry around, and we had cocktail and champagne glasses that lit up and necklaces that lit up as well. It was such a fun weekend away with a lot of like-minded people, and Chris always puts on a fabulous event, so this was really, really good and I wanted to record all of that. You can see with the inking on all the edges with tone-on-tone inking that all of the days from March 1st right through until the end of the month, which is this 31st one here, are represented by the colours, and I've got a fairly even spread of colour along here. It didn't vary too much in March for us, but we had beautiful mild weather, which was very, very enjoyable. I've also brought in this stamp set. I just thought it was good to dig through my stash and find these stamps here that would coordinate perfectly with my pages, and I've used those on the other pages that I'm about to show you as well. So I'm going to pop these into the album and then I'll be right back showing you a little flip through of March. I have to apologise a little bit for the glare here, but I really wanted to show you what this looks like with the page protectors on. I've cut a slit with a scalpel knife here so that the flip flap that I did here directly to my base page was able to feed through here so that I can flip that up. And what I've done is extended my March layouts because I wanted to include some more photos from this Phillip Island trip that I had. So I've used a 6x6 memory protector, and I will be putting journaling on here both back and front, but that will be easily slid out from behind this photo. You can see that that only goes down a certain way. I've put extra pieces of cardstock underneath the photo here so that it will stop and not slide all the way through, and I've used the slim alphabet to cut out Phillip, and on the other side of this is Ireland. I really wanted to highlight some of these photos. I am going to be scrapbooking this in a little bit more detail, and I'm going to do that in an 8.5 by 11 book because there were lots of stories and I want to be able to gift that to my daughter for memories for our mother-daughter trip away. You can see I've brought in some more of that stamping. So these memory protectors come in a set like this, and they are Pocket Plus, and there are several different designs. So I've used the design number 4 that has the 3x4 openings, and I've also used design number 1 that has the 6x4, and that fits in extremely well with a 12x12 layout, and you know that there are more photos coming. These squares that I've got here, I haven't done any treatment to those because they were going directly onto the white cardstock that I've matted my photos onto. They actually come from the inside pieces of these frames. So I left those aside in case I wanted to use them, and I think it just frames up my photos without detracting from the photos too much. You can see there's a little bit of white going through here. That's just to hide the photo of my daughter there, and I've got one of the two of us that I'm going to slip into here. And just putting these together with the March pages, I just wanted to have a flip through so that you could see exactly how March has come together for me. Julie's video has gone up at exactly the same time as mine, so if you haven't done so already, please click the link that you will see here and go and check out her March weather layout. I know that her colour tones for her papers are totally different from mine, and I hope you'll join us in April to see what our April layouts look like using the temperature blanket method in scrapbooking. Happy crafting and bye for now.